Hello, we are live. How's it going? Welcome back to another episode of the Sports Card Dad. We've got hold on. There we go. Sorry about that, Alex. We've got Alex Winter, president of Hakes Auctions. I had multiple windows up, so I had myself talking on 17 different streams there. There we go. We got it figured out. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back. Appreciate it.
No, this is exciting. We've got Alex back. He was here a couple of months ago. We've got another catalog auction up and running, and it is going well. Alex, what is new up in New Jersey? You're in New Jersey, right?
No, in York, Pennsylvania.
Oh, in Pennsylvania. That's right.
Yeah.
I was close.
Close.
Yeah. How is, are you guys staying warm? Is it starting to get a little bitter up there?
It was 80 degrees on Sunday, and now it's 40 degrees. So, yeah, a drastic change.
It's funny how similar it is to Raleigh, North Carolina, where I am. It's the same sort of deal. We had it at 80, and it's not quite 40, but it's definitely getting colder. So, but yeah, no, it's good to have you here again. And for those that might have not met you the first time around, I wanted to start off with just kind of a quick intro. You're president of Hakes Auctions, but you started off not president of Hakes Auctions. So how did that all work out?
So I'll keep it brief this time. Born a collector, but in the late 70s, really got into comic books and gum cards, sports and non-sport.
Okay.
And then in 1980, I really got serious and I started buying comics on a weekly basis, and I started buying music, physical media on a regular basis. And that has blossomed into, two major collecting categories and passions of mine. And then in the early 80s, I started to help a friend out at flea markets and toy shows. He happened to be working at Hakes at the time, needed help in the shipping department. So in 1985, I started at Hakes and I started as a shipping assistant and started just to learn everything. All the different categories that we offer, which we'll get into, are many. So I did photography, I did describing, I did shipping, became merchandise manager, became production manager, became general manager. And then about 8 years ago or so, became president of the company. So my one and only official job of 38 years. I've had some under the table jobs at music stores and at comic book shops. So again, I'm still in that environment, either above or below board.
And I remember your backdrop from last time. It looks unbelievable. Now, do you still add to the collection back there, or
I was moving stuff around this week, so yeah, absolutely, yeah.
How do you? So mine's in my office, and it's a smaller room where you are. But how do you prioritize kind of what is going to go where, or do you just get tired of seeing something in one place and you'll move it around?
Yeah, I switch stuff out. I mean, I have the luxury of we've got a pretty nice office here. So everyone decorates their own offices with their stuff, and we have lots of hallways. So a lot of stuff that doesn't fit here spills over into the hallways. Sometimes I'll switch stuff out from home to here. I'm a collector. I like tangible objects. I like to be surrounded by things, and certainly I am.
Fantastic. And we are now in a big Hakes catalog auction. And I know we're getting to the end of the year, but man, I was looking at a lot of the items, and it seems like there's a lot of bids. It seems like bids have been flowing in. How has business been just compared to years past? Obviously, you've been doing this a long time, but how are you feeling? We've got 14, 15 days left in the main auction.
Really good. I sort of agonize over every auction process, and I have to. I'm in charge, right? In charge of Hakes that way. That is, not in charge of what happens. I just have to let it go. But I do monitor things. I see how the bidders show up versus other auctions, how many items have bids on, how many bids are placed. I monitor all of that through the whole process. Ultimately, though, it comes down to those closing days of what really is going to dictate a successful auction or not. So, but I'm happy to say right now it's running very strong. Bidder numbers are there. Items are there. The bids are coming in on the key pieces. Multiple bids are coming in. So that's all well and good because, again, it really is those ending hours that dictate everything. But to see the progress that we've made so far after just 1 week, it's very good.
Yeah, and it's unbelievable. We talked about this last time, the amount of categories. I shared screen here so that people that haven't maybe been on the website or haven't spent a lot of time yet can just see it's broken down into so many different spots. And there was, I picked 5 or 6 that we're going to take a look at tonight. But there's one thing that you had pointed out that I thought was really interesting, is that Hakes was also founded on, or I guess a lot of the items was founded on were political type items. And I know that this audience, of course, a lot of sports card collectors, but also a lot of just collectors of a variety of things. Can you kind of dive in a little bit to the political pieces that started this?
Yeah. So the founder, Ted Hake, started his company in 1967. He came from a political background, both working on a campaign and also as a collector of political items. So he decided, I'm going to try this. It was a hobby. I'm going to try this full time, and started offering political pinback buttons and campaign memorabilia on what was called a mimeograph sheet, which is essentially a precursor to a photocopy, right? And everything was priced, though. It was not an auction. And he would send that out across the country. And what was happening is everyone on the East Coast bought everything. By the time the West Coast got these sheets, everything was sold and he had complaints. So very early on, he decided to switch it from a sales list to an auction platform. And then as he's buying these political items and collections, there are other things mixed in. So there's comic character stuff, there's comic books, there's at that time Western memorabilia and Disney items and sports items. And so it sort of blossomed from a political auction house to a catch-all pop culture and Americana auction house. So we're really the first auction house to offer such things as comic books and original art and action figures. And so, everybody that has worked at Hakes has been a collector of some sort, has stayed up on the latest trends. And so if we don't follow them as a collector, we certainly follow them as an auction house and make sure that we're offering something that everybody wants. And that sort of, as you can see from this list, and these are the premier catalog auctions that we have this many categories. We will sometimes diversify, and our online only auctions can be a little more select. They have been just comic books at times or just political, although lately they've blossomed into more categories as well. But what we find is that, and you can see by this room, I love a lot of different things, and we had customers all across the decades that also loved a lot of different things. So while we may have some people that are hyper-focused and just do sports or just do political, we have plenty of others that do those two and more. So it's not uncommon for someone to buy a JFK poster and a Mickey Mantle card and a Beatles poster, right? So we have those collectors that are more focused, and then those collectors that are diversified, or those collectors that become diversified. Maybe they hit the end of the road of a certain thing they're collecting. They want every Mickey Mantle card. They have it. Well, what's next? Do they branch out into another sports card? Do they branch out into another area altogether? And that has happened quite often, that collectors are obsessive by nature and are never done. So once one collection is completed or stagnant, they'll move on. And so our auction platform allows people to branch out as wide as they want. I mean, we really have it from, George Washington to Star Wars and everything in between.
So Dex Flow Toys, one of my buddies here, he's a big Transformers, really action figure collector, AFA in particular. He asks about the buyer's premium. We did have JTQ, did answer it here, but I just want to confirm that that's correct. Buyer's premium at 18%, 15% for check, money order, or wire payment.
JTQ is on point, and I should hire him. He knows his rules better than some of us. Yes, that's absolutely correct. Yeah.
All right. Fantastic. Yes. Yeah. Dex is talking about all the, I just bought a Beastman 8-pack He-Man off of eBay. Not one of these big ones that was, not in great shape, but I just wanted to have it. Yeah. Let's say hello to a collector's dream. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Orlando. We're actually going to look at a couple of vintage baseball cards that I think that you'll like. I'm going to pull up actually one here in a minute. But let's also touch on to Alex before I click on one of the items. How does bidding end? I know there's kind of a 20-minute timer. How does that work as bids come to an end?
Yeah. So we used to have a pretty convoluted way things ended when we first went online in 97. And a number of years we corrected that. We actually did a big survey, consigners, bidders, ourselves, what do we like? And we tried to condense it down. Because we don't end things in succession, that is to say lot by lot, we have a 20-minute clock. So at 9 o'clock on closing day, PM, we start a 20-minute clock on every item in the auction. If those items do not receive a bid in those 20 minutes at 9:20, they end. Anything that does receive a bid after 9 o'clock reopens for 20 minutes. So things close in waves, close in stages until the final item. Usually takes 2 or 3 hours, and then everything is closed. Some auctions that have this platform close as quickly as 2 minutes between bids, and some go as long as a half an hour. We kind of went in the sweet spot. We have 20 minutes, and we do that because we also have a callback service. And so we need time to get back to the people on the phone, and we feel it's the most fair. First, we have two dilemmas, right? A consignor wants it to go on forever,
right?
And have as many bids as possible. A bidder wants it to end as soon as possible so they can win. Well, we can't do both, and we can't make both totally happy. So that's why we kind of went in the middle, and we do the 20 minutes. It also allows, instead of the lot by lot closing, lots of things are open. So if you get outbid on something, you can jump back on another item that hasn't closed yet, versus if you really want lot 2 and you bid on it and get it, and then lot 4, maybe you wanted that, and now you spent your money on lot 2. So this gives you a lot more options and flexibility in placing your bids and being able to move around, and hopefully everyone comes away with a win at some point.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. So you don't necessarily have to have bid on something if it goes into kind of extended bidding, you can jump in on something. You don't have to be on the initial bid.
No, and there are auction houses, and if that works for them, great, that say you have to bid before a certain time or you can't come in. To me, you're alienating bidders that want to wait longer. You can't snipe with us. So it's not like you're going to come in and just win it. You're going to restart that clock. But some bidders like to wait till the end. Some bidders forget. I mean, let's be realistic. And then they say, oh my gosh, well, now they would have missed the auction because they didn't bid by an X amount of time. Not with us. As long as the item is open, you can bid.
Okay, perfect. Let's talk about this very unique, and actually Orlando Collector's Dream pointed this out in the chat, very rare Jackie card. I want to talk about this one because this is a great card here for vintage card collectors, especially. There's a lot of baseball card collectors that watch the show. Can you tell us a little bit about this card in particular? I know I did read the bio, so I know I've got I know enough to be dangerous, but do you want to kind of touch on this one?
Sure. Yeah. So going back to somebody mentioned the Cuban cards. So that was about 12 years ago. We started selling the Richard Merkin collection. And Richard Merkin was a well-known artist and socialite. He's actually on the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's album cover because he was friends with Peter Blake, who did the photo of that. And he was a big baseball fan. He's done paintings of baseball players, and he's had books published on his paintings. But he was very much into the Negro Leagues and Cuban Leagues. And so he, at that time, was really the one and only, or one of very few, that was collecting this material in the 70s and 80s and amassed an amazing collection. And he actually had in that collection one of these issues of Our Sports magazine. And so I knew of this card from that because it's advertised on the inside front cover, but it was just sort of a passing glance, and I didn't give another thought about it until this showed up. So what makes this so rare is Our Sports magazine was only published for 5 issues in 1953. And Jackie Robinson was the editor of this magazine.
Yeah.
It just did not sell well for whatever reason. And after 5 issues, it was done. The only way you got this card was by subscribing to the magazine for $2. So they were 25 cents off the rack or $2 subscription. Well, it didn't sell 25 cents off the rack. I don't know if anybody or very few outside of this person subscribed to get this card.
Oh, wow.
And what's really weird is, and his name is typed on this. And we also have the Mickey Mantle membership card this time that came from him, both equally rare. He's from Canada. So here you had a kid in the 50s in Canada that was joining all of these fan clubs. We have another 20 or so different fan club cards to come up in the future auction. So no one in the States was paying attention to the fan clubs or this magazine to get this through the subscription service. So that's what makes it so rare, is it was a mail away incentive, which on its own would have been rare unless this was a blockbuster magazine. It wasn't. The magazine was canceled, and we know of no other card out there. We have yet to hear of another one. and nor we sent it to CGC. I worked with Andy Broom there, VP at grading. He had never seen it. He was excited to put it in one of their new oversized holders as well. So he hadn't seen it. I haven't seen it. It wasn't in the Richard Merkin collection, was expansive. So that's not to say there isn't another one out there.
Sure.
But we're saying it's the only one known for now.
Wow. Yeah, and it's actually in pretty decent shape. I mean, I know it's a 2.5, but I mean, it could be completely, it could be ripped in half.
The eye appeal is much better than a 2.5, and it's got rounded corners, so you don't have any corner issues there. It looks sharp.
Yeah.
What happened is it went through a typewriter to have that name put in it, so that made it get some creases, but you only see those upon close inspection. It presents very, very nicely. And it's just, to find a Jackie Robinson item that nobody has offered before after all this time, and to find any baseball item. But when we put Jackie Robinson behind it, one of the most important figures in baseball, athletically and also civil rights, it's a pretty special piece.
Oh, absolutely. Speaking of civil rights, we'll stay on that trend here. I pulled up one. I thought this was a really interesting piece, and it kind of speaks to some of the political pieces, the historical pieces that you guys are able to acquire here. It's an MLK, Martin Luther King, signed March 31st, 1968, final Sunday sermon program, possibly his last autograph out there. So I thought this was a really cool one. Do you want to go ahead and speak to it?
Sure. And I urge everyone to go on the website and read the description, because Scott, our director of Americana, did an incredible job. This went through a number of rewrites till we got it just what we wanted. And this comes directly from the person who obtained the signature. So unlike many autographs that we have that the story is lost to time, and that's on just a basic item, but to have the backstory on this one, something is so significant. So this was what would become his last Sunday sermon. Right after the sermon was over, they had a press conference at another location nearby. And so he was moved over there. And as the person who got this ultimately signed was leaving the sermon, he sees a local news crew rushing into this auditorium. And their trunk is open and it's full of expensive equipment. So he stops and says, "Hey, your trunk's open." And so they thank him profusely. And he sort of says, "Well, do me a solid, get me in this press conference so I can see King." So they begrudgingly did that, or reluctantly did that, because they probably shouldn't have. So he sees the whole conference. And then when it's over, they say, "Mr. King's going to exit through the back door. Everyone, make sure you're out of the way." He happened to be at the back door. So this is true story of perfect, place, right time, right place, all of that. And as King is getting ready to leave, he steps in front of me and says, "Mr. King, would you mind signing this? Admire what you're doing." King signs it, gets in the limo, drives away. 4 days later, he's assassinated. So,
wow.
Could he have signed other things and maybe some documents or checks or things? Sure. We're kind of building this as it's potentially the last autograph. Let's state it that way.
Sure.
Certainly is documented as the last. And with this story, it's just incredible, and King is a very desirable signature to begin with, not just for political or civil rights collectors, but autograph collectors in general. There's Babe Ruth and there's Walt Disney and there's the Beatles. There's some kind of very desirable autographs that everybody wants. King is one of them. King was not the Beatles or a baseball star or a movie star where autographs were commonplace. You always ask those people for that. He was more, people came up to him, shook his hand, said, "I appreciate what you're doing." And it wasn't so much an autograph. So again, just to have what could be his last or one among his last autographs, and also on this program, which there's find another program, let alone a signed program. So all of this lines up to be a very, very special piece. And we have sold some incredible King items in the past. We had a copy of this first book that was signed by Chief Justice Earl Warren. That did very well, $49,000. We actually had a jail logbook from Birmingham, where he was incarcerated in 1963 for a short time. and he had signed that multiple times, and that sold for like 130,000. So I'm not saying that I'm putting that in this range. I'm just saying this is now a trio of really incredible King items we've had over the last 5 years or so, and we get one after the other based on the results that we've produced. So word of mouth was good.
How often does a piece like that show up? You mentioned a few over the last 5 years. I mean, is that like once a year typically, or do they, a couple, or is it just when they come? I mean, how often have they come up?
Of something that for just King, you're saying?
For just King, yeah.
Those three, let's look at it this way. Those are 3 over our 56 years. They just happen to be condensed in 5 years. Otherwise, there is no other track record after that. We've had King's signatures on a index card or something, but no, we're just fortunate that 3 items in the last 5 years, but it's really 56 years.
Wow. Okay. Very, very cool. All right. I'm going to switch over to something a little bit different here. We're going to go a little pop culture movie poster. So we're not talking about the 5-figure stuff here. This is current bid is at $220, but I thought this one was just cool because it is one of the original release posters going back to 1977. And it looks like, they have a few different versions of these or different prints. This being, I believe, 4th print. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, and 4th print as in contemporary to the original release. I don't want people to think it's a 4th print from 20 years later. It would be a re-release at that point. But this was, it kept building and building. So more and more theaters started showing it, and more posters were needed, or people took posters down and maybe took them home and wanted a replacement at the movie theater. And there were also many different, even for this, I say, the first Star Wars movie, because to me it was the first. Now it's 4, right? In the grand scheme of things. But it was so popular that it went through many different versions of the poster because the theater wanted to keep it looking fresh. So they did style A, style B, and all these different variants. But this is the original. So the only difference from the 1st and the 4th comes down to the NSS number, which is National Screen Services number. Otherwise, it's the same and within the first year or so of release. And even the first printing that can be 2,000 to 4,000. I've seen them go 5 to 10 sometimes, but 2 to 4 is sort of the sweet spot. But a 4th, because it is a 4th, this typically is in the $700-800 range. So you're talking about still something from 1977, from the original film, and a beautiful piece of art to hang on your wall for a very affordable price based on what other posters can run you.
I like the simplicity with this one when you look at it, and it's just, especially just kind of knowing where Star Wars ended up going and just the overall cultural impact. It might be the most iconic IP ever. I mean, when you look at just what has kind of blown up out of it as far as movies and TV are concerned. So yeah, I really like this piece. So I wanted to bring it up here. Ryan has a quick question. I don't know if he was asking chat or with us, but do you know of any autographed baseball related William Howard Taft items? He was a huge fan of the game.
I do not. Certainly nothing that I've ever seen or we've ever offered. So not to say there aren't, but I can't name check anything.
Okay. We tried there, Ryan. We tried. We're going to go back to vintage baseball. 1908-10 American Caramel E91 Set C, the Walter Johnson. Bidding is sitting at $11.01 and 10 cents. 13 days to go. Anything on this one, Alex, that you'd like to share?
There's not much. You got a crowd of card collectors that know this set. It's a classic.
War pleasers, yes.
And there's a set that's full of certainly the C. They did A, B, and C over 1908, 1909, 1910. 1910 had a few Hall of Famers, but a lot of just players. So Walter stands out. Walter to this day is still in the top. Again, you can argue top 5 greatest pitchers of all time. It's a classic looking card, a nice looking example for 3. So again, this is not a 8-9 grade that's going to break the bank. This is an affordable 100-plus-year-old Hall of Fame card.
Absolutely. Yeah, we do have, especially in the chat here, Orlando Ryan, some vintage baseball card collectors. I'm sure they know all about this card. Hakes does have, that's one thing I noticed. You guys consistently get really nice, especially pre-war vintage stuff. I've noticed that.
Yeah, well, over the last 2 times we were lucky. We have one collection we're working off of, longtime collector of not just cards, but some of the pinback buttons we had. We've got some other things coming up, some photos and postcards, and he had a lot of, well, some pre-1900, lots of pre-war, and then there is some post-war as well, but we've concentrated on the pre-war stuff so far. So we'll see what comes next time. It's still a collection we're working through. Most of the better cards have been spread out over the last 2 auctions. But again, if consigners are out there listening, we are looking for more of that material. So we don't have to just sell from one collection. We'll take multiple collections.
Absolutely. I pulled this one up because this has been a popular card here with a lot of non-sports, vintage non-sports getting traction. The 1940 Superman, the gum ink set. You know, you guys have a complete low numbered set here, PSA graded. Unbelievable. Current bid at $7,000, 4 bids, 14 days to go. I'll pull up one of the images here. There's multiple images too, if you want to check it out on Hakes, guys. But this is obviously, you know, gotten more popular as kind of the pop culture vintage stuff is. I feel like it's finally getting its due.
So, right, and for multiple reasons. I mean, for decades, this was one of the key non-sport issues. That's a certain group of collectors. Then we have sports card collectors gravitating for decades now into the non-sport market. And in the last 10 years or so, we now have comic book collectors that are coming over to this because it's Superman and because you can get them graded or slab, right? So they're collecting graded comic books. They may not branch out and collect other merchandise, that costumes and toys and so forth, but comic collectors are definitely gravitating towards these cards as graded examples. So not only do we have this full set of the low number, we also have a number 1 card on its own, which is an X Mint 6, which is a crazy grade for that and for the number 1 card, right? So the extended series was 49 to 72. So those sold less than the initial cards, so they're rare. 1 in 72, top and bottom card, that's what got the rubber band put around it. So to get a number 1 card in this grade is very difficult. So we have this set, which is nice. Then you can upgrade the number 1 card if you want. And then we have a dozen or so of the higher number cards offered individually after this as well. But yeah, the artwork is great. The text on the back that relays the story on the front. I mean, it really is just a classic set with so much cross interest.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And you're right. I think over the last few years, more of the sports card and comic book people have really moved over into these types of cards. We've got kind of those early Walt Disney cards that have really gotten more expensive, Superman and so forth. So yeah, it's fun because you are seeing, it feels like more cross-pollination with a ton of different collectible categories. And that's one thing that I really love about your auctions is just there's so many different things. There's so many different categories, different items, and you never really know, what's going to pop up.
Yeah, well, we don't from time to time. I mean, we have those collections that are here. Some of the non-sport, we actually have 2 pedigree non-sport collections, Roxanne Tozer and John Grossman. Those are extensive, and we know we'll be selling those for the next year. But so much of the auction does not show up until this one ends. And then we start getting contacted by the people. So when one auction ends, we have an idea, a blueprint of what's going to be in the next auction. But many times we could be in the final weeks of getting things together. And it happened last time with the Amazing Spider-Man comic that we sold. That really came to us in the final weeks. Had it been something else, we would have bumped it to the next one because there really wasn't time. It turned out to be a $500,000 comic book, so we weren't going to bump that till the next time. So we kind of balanced that out, and so a lot of people will say right after auction ends, well, what's in the next one? And a lot of times we just don't know.
Yeah, was it an all-time high for that 9.6?
Oh yeah. It was 560, and the previous example for the same grade sold at another auction last year for about 180,000 less. So to do a 200,000 plus over that sale, I'm thrilled. The consignor was thrilled, but it was unexpected. At the same time, 9.6s, there are 5. You know,
Yeah.
when the next one comes up, who knows? And there's 2 9.8s that may never come up for sale.
Dex asked about vintage newspapers. Do they sell well? Do you guys get those often?
Not really. They've never had a great market. I mean, there'll be select ones. Dewey defeats Truman. That headline is one that will sell. But no, for the most part, we don't do too much in the newspaper realm.
Okay. All right, guys, I think that we are going to wrap up. We just wanted to say hello, give a little intro again. Not you guys have met Alex before, but in case you missed him the first time around, the big catalog auction ends in 14 days. Do I have that right, Alex? Roughly, approximately?
Yeah, 14th and 15th. Yep.
Yeah, so I will have a link in the video description and in the pinned comments that'll take you to Hakes, but it's fun just to go and explore. And even if it's not this auction, they've got the monthly online auctions and then other category auctions as well, of course, that come up throughout the year. We've got a comment here from JTQ that PM15 complete set is also awesome. Other than the one in this auction. Absolutely.
Yeah, we had that. There's another one. We had a couple auctions ago. It did over 5,000, I think. That was from the Palmuchinsky collection. Anyway, there's another case where in 56 years we had not had a set at all, and now we had 2 just in the last couple of years. So those things happen, and then it may be another 10 years till we have another set. We don't know.
Orlando says, thanks, been looking at your auction house for over 10 years. Yeah, no, absolutely. Hakes has been around, but Hakes has been around since 1967. They have some hidden gems in there, so don't miss out. All right, guys, thanks very much for joining. We'll have Alex back on again in the future. Have a good night. Thanks again, Alex. Stay on. I'll be right back.